Okay, brilliant. So thanks a lot for joining. My name is Alex, and I'm going to take you through our webinar on how to set up a successful e-commerce business. And there's quite a couple of things that we want to cover today. First of all, we want to review like the e-commerce journey and like how it differs from like the conventional retail journey. But I'm not going to bore you anything here because I'm sure you all have used e-commerce websites in the past. But we just want to like compare some fundamentals, and then we want to see how we can actually adjust this journey end to end and how we can like use different methods to improve it. So one of the things that we want to look at is like how can we actually use customer psychology, increase our conversions while we drive people through the funnel. We want to see how we can use analytics and how we set them up properly in order to get the most data and information about our activities that we're doing in terms of like generating traffic and obviously like marketing to people. And we want to take a look at like merchandising and how we can use this properly in order to increase again our conversions and get the right product in front of the right people. So I'm sure you're all here because like obviously e-commerce right now seems to be a hot topic. It's interesting because like it's obviously been around for a very long time. I built my own e-commerce website in 1999, which is like what, 20 years ago. And the first time I actually ordered food online, I was thinking about this, was in 2004. And back then, like when you were ordering like groceries online, you were thinking, okay, it's kind of like odd, is this the right thing, to do? But, we all got kind of used to it. But what we see now is that there is a huge push again, to go online because like obviously the current situation, has us left staying at home. And we need to find new ways on how we can generate revenue, and potentially, e-commerce is one of those things on how we can get in front of the right customers. So the first thing we want to take a look at is like the conventional and e-commerce journey. So what do? We usually create, some sort of like traffic and awareness about our site. We're pushing ads out there, we're sending emails, we're doing SEO and so forth. And then we lead people to our store, right? So we want them to click our ads, go to the store. And now once they land on the store, obviously we need to think about like how we can actually convert this traffic into customers. And now, as nice as it sounds to set up an e-commerce website, it doesn't necessarily mean that people are actually going to start buying right away. So we need to do the right things and the right tactics in order to actually convert them and push them further and further along the funnel so that they convert into like paying customers. And then the next question is obviously depending on the amount of products that we have, like what products do we actually position here and how do we position them, right? So do we put our top sellers in front of all customers? Do we like put maybe more cheaper entry-level products? Are we looking at like different margins because we might have products with a higher or lower margin? And what about recommending products to our customers, maybe based on their interest, right? So we can go very scientific about it, and we can also go like very simple. Now, that's why we're going to spend quite some time talking about e-commerce merchandising and what that actually means, right? So it's about how can we like get the right products, but how can we present those products in the most effective way to create sales. And if we think about e-commerce, then there are a couple of things that we can measure in order to figure out, if things are working or not. So one of the things is obviously the traffic, right? So are we getting the right amount of traffic, and not only the right amount, but the right people onto our site? Then can people find what they were looking for? Because we might send a lot of traffic, but this traffic might not actually, be there for what they've been looking for in the first place. And we also need to see that we can make sure that people are leaving this consideration stage and actually making that purchase, right? So other things are our prices competitive, do we have any technical issues and so forth. So there are so many things that we can measure along this whole journey of e-commerce that what we really need here is a measurement plan. And in a nutshell, a measurement plan is a way for you to measure, what are those different factors that you want to measure. And secondly, and most importantly, it's about like having a plan on how to adjust them. Because one thing is measuring it, the other one is like knowing how can I make it better. And we want to take a look at this as well. And then of course, at some point we're going to have like people buying our products, and then we're dealing with whole different issues. We're dealing with like refunds, we're dealing with actually fulfilling the orders. And also this needs to be extremely smooth in the e-commerce world, because we are competing with companies that have been doing this for a very long time, and they have it figured out, and they're doing this in a very smooth and efficient way. So we want to offer an experience that is as close as possible to them so that we can compete online. And there is a lot of things that we have to do, on just setting up an easy and basic e-commerce offering. And I know that like a lot of people are now talking about, the future of e-commerce with like robot delivery and drones and 3D printing and so forth. And while these things like eventually are going to come, we still find ourselves right now in 2020 in a situation where we really need to make sure that we set up a basic successful e-commerce offering. And that's what we want to take a look at today. So first off, if we look at a typical retail experience, so what does a retail experience look like? I'm talking specifically about a salesperson, right? So what does a good salesperson in a retail store do? When a customer enters, they qualify by asking some questions. Then potentially they propose a range of products that they see fit. And then they push the customer to obviously making a purchase, and potentially they push them to like, buy like a product that's like has a higher margin, or that's like, more, profitable for the company, let's say. And then in the end of that, we're trying to upsell, right? So like they already made a decision, okay, I'm going to buy this pair of trousers or whatever, what goes with it, like socks and a belt maybe. And that's kind of like what happens in the physical world. And what we really need to do in an e-commerce world is to reassemble that and like do the same thing, but do online. And there are actually a lot of advantages of when we go online, because if we look at the qualification process and how we can do this online, there is a lot of additional tools that we have compared to the conventional retail experience. So the first thing is that we can look at the customer's behavior. So we can figure out, what are they looking at? What are they clicking through? Where did they come from? Did they search for something specific? Have they maybe purchased something before? Are they an existing customer, and so forth? And that's important because like, even for, you have like excellent salespeople, but like scaling this across like thousands and thousands of people becomes obviously a challenge, because you can't remember every single person that walks into your store. So that's the huge advantage of e-commerce. And I'm not going to pitch you, like why it's important to go online and e-commerce and stuff. That's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm trying to make the point that like we have tools and data available that we can use, if done properly, to like increase our conversions. And that's really the important part. The second thing is recommendations. So we can, of course, also do this online. And what we have here is like a huge opportunity, because what we can do now is we can extend this journey way beyond the time that someone has visited our website and has left. So we can use retargeting to push them advertisements. We can use automated emails to like bring them back to our website. And that's a huge advantage, because here we can increase that whole cycle that we have with our customer and the time that we can spend with them way beyond a conventional retail experience, because now we're talking about actually engaging with the customer across different channels and for a longer period of time. And that's very important to get this also right when we're setting up an e-commerce platform. The next thing is that we can, of course, like also increase our margin. Now that could be done by pushing the right products, and again, like using like data and intelligence, we can make sure that we are pushing the products that are not only good for the customer, which is usually the most important part, but that are potentially also important for us to actually sell, and so that customers are getting a good deal out of it. And of course, up and cross-selling becomes also very nicely done on e-commerce, because again, we're having this long-term memory of where we can know and remember what people have been looking at, what have they bought in the past, and what we can potentially offer them in order to create those additional sales. And the nice thing is we can test all this. So if we're looking at some of the key factors that make up a successful strategy in terms of like actually creating conversion on our site, then we're looking at the following. The first one is the channels, right? So we need to make sure that we are present on the right channels to reach the right people. So an example for this would be to be present on Facebook if we think that our customers are available on Facebook, and then potentially we can advertise there. If they're like available on like specific websites, then we can push ads on those specific websites. So the channels determine that we're reaching the right audience. The second part is the targeting. And this means like to narrow down the audience within a specific channel and saying that, okay, so our product is available, you know, maybe for like the younger generation, or it's only for female or for male, or it's for people that like golf, you know, we don't know. We can adjust the targeting accordingly, and therefore have like the most relevant audience that we're talking to. The next thing is the messaging. So we need to make sure that our messaging is on par so that we actually get people to click on our advertisements or on our emails or on our banners on our website and so forth. And then we go into the actual experience, which is that part where we actually go onto our site, where we start making those transactions and where we want people to buy. And the content is the essential product that we're having, but like beyond the product, also the entire catalog and the offering that we're presenting to them on our e-commerce platform. Now, the important thing is that each of those different factors influences each other. So that means I could have like the perfect constellation of like one channel with one targeting and one messaging, but as soon as I exchange one of them or move one to another channel, it doesn't mean that it necessarily works. And that's why it's so important that we're measuring the conversion between each of them. So that means we can measure the conversion of a specific channel. We can measure the conversion of a specific targeting that we're running. We can look at a specific message that works really well, and so forth. So this measurement is important to be done, and we need to have the right tools in place in order to do that. Because otherwise, we're going to spend money on something that may actually not work. And to have this insight and the data can save us advertising costs, and it can increase our conversion. That's the whole goal of a e-commerce website. And the way we can do this is using A/B testing. So that's relatively straightforward. So we can try a specific, let's say, ad with a specific audience on a specific channel, and we can run another ad with the same targeting on the same channel, and then we can see which one performs better. And we can A/B test not only ads, but we can A/B test all the different factors against each other. So which targeting works best, which channels work best, which ads within each targeting and channel works best, and so forth. It sounds, maybe like overwhelming or complicated, but there are like obviously like a lot of tools that are doing this for us already. And especially if you're looking at like Facebook ads or like Google ads, they have all this figured out, they have it all set up, and they will help you to increase those conversions by just giving them the right amount of data. And this way we can optimize our conversions more and more, and therefore increase our sales while lowering our advertising costs. And it's not only about advertising, it's also about testing the experience. So if you think about like a checkout process, there might be different ways to like structure this process, and one version may work better in certain cases that would again increase your conversions. So if you look at Amazon, they have the buy now button that like initiates like an instant checkout process, and all these kind of like different elements we can test in order to figure out what works best for our specific e-commerce website. Now, once we have that figured out and we kind of like know how we want to drive traffic and optimize it and like improve our experience, we need to think about how can we actually get our customers to understand what we're offering, and how can we help them to make the right buying decisions. And we really want to help them to make the right buying decisions, right? And this is not psychology to manipulate people. This is psychology to understand how people think when they're actually buying something, and how we can use this in order to give them the right information that they're looking for. So one example is, it's an old story of like a food truck kind of like business. And what they had like a menu with like 50 different menu items, everything from like Indian to Mexican to Chinese food, and like whatever you want, right? And what they experienced was that during lunchtime, people would come and they would stand in front of that menu and look at it for like 3 minutes and then walk out. And the owner was wondering then, what else can I put potentially on my menu that like people would want to eat, right? Because like it's enough offering, right? They still can't find something, they're still walking out, until someone told him that like the issue is actually that you have too many things. People can't make a decision. And that's one of the important things that we also need to think about, that we're not overloading people with too many options, but we're giving them lesser options and help them to actually make a choice, right? Because like overloading people with too much information can confuse them and can lead them to go somewhere else. Another element of that is to have customers help selling for you. And I mean, there is obviously one thing in terms of like referral systems and all that, but like what I'm more referring to is social proof. And that means to ask people for testimonials. That's asking people to like write reviews for your products and really showing others that, you know, this product has been purchased before. That's the social proof part of it. And it really works well for technically all sorts of products, right? But like obviously if you're selling anything that's also like a digital product, for example, then it really helps to like show people that other people have purchased this before. And I actually saw like just before this webinar, like a website, I can share it later on. It's a tool that actually enables you to like plug it onto your website and show the last purchase that have happened, verified by this tool, so that other customers can see that people are actually buying certain products. And it's in real time, and it kind of like shows constant updates on like who's buying the product. So that's another important thing, to use social proof to get the trust of potential buyers. One more thing is urgency and scarcity, and that's quite interesting because a lot of websites are using this to convert sales. So the sample that we're looking at here, it's a website called Ecstasy, and like what they're doing is like selling pictures that you can order with like, you know, like a nice frame and so forth. And they advertise heavily on like Instagram and lead you to their page where they like show you 3 different pictures. And what they do then, they show you that this is a limited edition, and it's like only maybe 4 available, 20 available, 12 available, and whatsoever. So they update in real time like how many people are actually buying. Now, if it's really like a limited edition or not, I haven't looked that deep into it, but like that's the method that they're using to create this kind of like urgency that, you know, people want to go ahead and purchase this now, rather than, you know, start thinking about it, going away, potentially forgetting about it, because that's what we do, right? So we want to buy something, we like it, not sure, let me think about it, and then I have forgotten about it again. So pushing people, you know, to make a decision can be important as well. And it's kind of like the same as with the food truck. And the other thing, of course, is like, you know, things like Black Friday sales and like general sales events, because there the whole, you know, like feeling of like grabbing a great deal kicks in, you know, where you go into like a shopping spree and you get a good feel because you're buying like those things that are like on a discount. So that's another way to also look at it. So like it's about scarcity, making things like available in limited quantities, making it exclusive, or making it members only. So that's another way we can do in order to push our sales. And I'm sure most of you have used booking.com at some point. And if you look at their page, they do kind of like all these things together on one page, right? So they show urgency by highlighting the availability of rooms and that it's potentially running low. They use social proof by showing when was the last time one of those rooms was booked. And they have their special member program that if you join it, you get special offers and discounts. So there is a lot of like good practices that we can learn by like looking at those websites and how they are doing things. Another way to, you know, explain, it's not so much pushing people necessarily, but it's more about like explaining a price to people, is price framing. And that's quite interesting because if you look at this number now, so it's $208, right? So by itself, this number doesn't really mean much. And it doesn't matter what the product is, because like, even imagine it's like, you know, a TV that you're looking at here, 208, you know, is this like the right price for a TV, or is it like too expensive, or are there other prices available, and so forth. So like the price itself doesn't really help. But as soon as we add more information to it, we increase the context, right? So now we know that this is 208 now, but before it was 260. So now I know I'm going to actually get a good deal out of this. Well, potentially, but at least I know that, you know, it's a difference of like the $54 that I can save here now. And if I then add more information to this, I have potentially like a 20% discount that I'm highlighting here, and I say that's a value deal. I have more information. So now this 208 becomes more tangible. And if I go one step further, I could also say that like this is really just the same as if you would be buying 18 or paying $18 a month. And if you compare these like 4 different boxes, you can see that by adding more information around the price, we're framing this price in a way that it becomes more understandable for the consumer. What is this $208 actually, you know, worth in terms of value? Here's another example. It's a website, you know, where you can get like, you know, stock advice and all that kind of stuff. Maybe not the best idea right now. But what they do is they use exactly the same principles, right? So you can see in the first line, they're saying that join now for only $99. That's just $190 a week. And then they have the call to action button that says exactly the same again, right? So join now for as little as $190 a week. And then in the red line, they have the same information where they're saying it's actually $199 usually, but now you're just going to pay $99, and then they're going to like highlight some benefits as well. So you can see like how this kind of like frames that $99 into something that's more comprehensible in terms of like what's the potential value behind this. And another way of doing it is that you frame prices like this, and that's what you usually see when you go for like software as a service kind of like platforms, that you compare the different packages with each other, which then again brings this context of which one, you know, of those, or what this price actually means, right? Because you have like a comparison all of a sudden. And what on this specific example, I think what's also very interesting is that obviously it doesn't matter which of those options you choose, you're always going to end up in a higher one, right? So those pricing models are designed around, you know, having an entry level, and then from there you're missing some features. You want to move to the next one before you know it, you pay the 49, and then you need another feature, you pay the 129. So it doesn't really matter to the company which one you choose, but this page helps to convert more because like you give different options to people by showing them these kind of like comparisons. Now, once we have that figured out, the next thing is to look at analytics. And that's really important because like, as we mentioned earlier, is that we want to be able to measure everything from the very first like initiation and traffic that we're getting to our site all the way through until we make the purchase, and beyond that when people are coming back to potentially buy more. And that's why we need to set up analytics right from the start and not something that we do later on. It's more important than the e-commerce website itself, technically, but we need the e-commerce website. And on that note, actually, I think a lot of like e-commerce projects start with the e-commerce technology and the platform, and I don't think that's the problem that we have right now. I think there is so much, you know, platforms available from like an entry-level Shopify to like, you know, something more complicated on like an enterprise level if you want, and that technology part is not so much the issue. They're complicated to set up at times, you know, but like it's done, you know, it's done 1,000 times. What's really important and what's more complicated is actually to driving traffic and converting this. And that's why analytics is so important. Now, you can obviously install Google Analytics, and we're going to talk a little bit more about other ways on how you can enhance this. But some of the things that you want to track is, for example, like what are people doing on the site? And like one of the things is like you want to track, you know, how many people are actually adding items to the shopping cart, how many of those are dropping off and don't complete the purchase, so how many of them abandon their shopping cart. And because this information is super important, because like you want to know if there is potentially something wrong along the way. And it could be a technical thing, but it could be also something completely different, because like if you remember, we said we want to have the right messaging that we're going to push in front of people. So potentially your messaging is amazing, or potentially your messaging is amazing for a certain target audience that you're pushing it to, but that whatever product you're advertising might be not the right thing. And that's not because you're selling something that's not, you know, not the right thing, but like it might just be attracting the wrong people and so forth. And we can measure those things accordingly using the right analytics setup. Now, another reason why this is important is because technically things can also go wrong. And this is an example of something that happened to a customer of ours. What they had is like, you know, the typical credit card checkout process where you verify the transactions using a one-time password via SMS. And what happened, the bank would send that SMS, and you would go to your SMS and copy it and go back to the page and paste it and press the button, and it would throw an error. And you wouldn't know what's going on. So you would go back, you would try again, copy paste the one-time password and try again and copy, and it wouldn't work. And obviously what happened is that like people didn't, you know, like try like 3, 4, 5 times, but at some point they just like stopped, and like that was a massive decline and loss of profit for this company, which was a very high transaction kind of like website. And those things need to be measured so that you can figure out where people do drop off, because like just assuming that things work, that's not a good idea. And like using analytics, we can see exactly where something happens, where the conversions drop, and how you then can potentially fix that. And if you think about, making a small percentage increase in conversion on any stage across the funnel, that can, increase your sales dramatically, and that's why it's so important. Then the next thing is that we want to also be able to send our sales information back to analytics. And the reason why we want to do this, because we might say, oh, wait a minute, I don't want them to know how much I'm selling. Well, they can actually help you to sell more by giving this information, and we're going to talk about this in a second. However, what's really important is that we want to also be able to track back our sales in our analytics to the different sources that we had in the beginning in order to generate this traffic. So, for example, if I have a certain product that is selling really well, then I want to know, like, where is the traffic actually coming from? So that I know which of my campaigns are really working or which of my landing pages are really performing. And the other way around, if one product doesn't really sell, then again, what is the funnel that people are going through in order to land on this product, and where do they drop off? So that's why it's important to send this information back to your analytics platform so that you can measure your actual sales impact on the different channels and how you're operating. Now, I mentioned earlier that those platforms are going to help you to increase your sales. And what I mean by this is that if you're looking into Google ads or Facebook ads, what you can do, you can actually send them back the sales information, and they will optimize the campaigns accordingly, because they will prioritize things that work and convert versus things that don't convert. And why do they do this? It's not necessarily not only to help you, but also to help the customers, right? They're not going to show an ad to people that is never being purchased, but they're going to show ads to people that are going to be purchased, because that means this ad is good and people actually want to buy it. So that's why it's quite important to have this kind of integration. The next thing is also that we want to track, of course, the product popularity, whatever is most bought, what's most refunded, very important, because again, we want to see what potentially is purchased, but then we have to constantly refund, and people actually don't want to keep that product. So that's an issue. And based on all this information, we can, of course, adjust our marketing, but also our merchandising efforts, which means making sure that the way we are placing our products and the products that we have are the right ones on our website. And all this will help us to improve our costs and, of course, our conversions. So talking about the whole integration with different advertising platforms, so one thing you can do is to use a tool called Google Tag Manager. And that's not Google Analytics, it's a different software. It's called Google Tag Manager. And basically what it does, it helps you to consolidate all the different tags that you have from different platforms into one system, and it adds a data layer on top of your e-commerce platform as well. So what that means in more practical terms is the following: that your website is triggering certain events. It's for example, sending the sales information from a shopping cart purchase, a specific event, if someone adds something to a shopping cart, into this data layer. And this data layer then becomes available for you to disseminate and take this information and send it elsewhere. So this means you can, for example, take a shopping cart transaction, send it to Google Analytics for tracking and reporting, send it to Google Ads in order to inform Google Ads which of the advertisements have actually performed, send it to Facebook Ads, and send it to your Power BI dashboard in order to create some fancy reports for the management to see how the store is doing. So that's really useful because it helps doing all those things in a relatively efficient way. Plus, it doesn't require you to build custom integrations into every single platform, which is obviously quite time intensive, and also to maintain it becomes quite difficult. So that's why I would recommend anything from enhanced e-commerce analytics and Google Tag Manager to set this up properly in the beginning makes a lot of sense, because it will really give you those kind of powerful tools that you can redistribute your data to those advertising platforms and make sure that you can use them properly and get the best results. Now, what we want to look at now is at e-commerce merchandising. And there are two parts to it, obviously. So the first one is the merchandising part, where we figure out what should we be selling. And if you're producing your own product, then that's probably pretty clear, right? So you're going to sell those products, but potentially you are a retailer and you want to sell products from other brands, right? So we need to know what sells online and what sells on our store. But The second thing of this merchandising part is to actually like place the products in the right way on our site so that we can increase again the conversion and more importantly show the right thing to the customers so that they have the best experience possible. And I'm thinking back, you know, like when in this e-commerce experience I had like 20 years ago, it was for like a mail order. And that was a mail order was the thing where, you know, you get a catalog every like 3 months and then you would go through the catalog and then call them and then they would send you that stuff, right? And we obviously like took that whole thing online. But this is the important difference now because that catalog was like fixed for like 3 months, right? So it would be just the same information and it wouldn't know obviously what I like. I just have to go to the things that I wanted. Now, like in terms of online merchandising, those things can be updated in sheer real time and they can be personalized for the individual, and that's very powerful. And we can't easily do this on any other platform. And I'm talking like, you know, like physical, because we can't remember like every single customer when they walk into our store or when they like read our, you know, catalog or whatever, and then like change the experience for them. But online we can. And so a couple of things what we can do in terms of e-commerce merchandising is to promote our products based on, you know, different attributes. So one of them is that we could look at like products that convert really well. We could also look at the margin, right? So which products like really yield a good margin for us, and also like on trends, right? In this example, we can see what the world's most stylish women are buying right now. And I think there is two things to this. There is also the kind of like, again, social thing to it, a social proof kind of element, because it tells, you know, the customer that this is trending stuff, you know, obviously for them to decide if it's really trending or not, but it helps us to like show them the right, you know, information in terms from a merchandising perspective. And that's important. Now, the other thing is also when we merchandise, we potentially want to promote things and we want to sponsor things. And that's obviously need to be done in like a careful way because we want to make sure that whatever we're promoting on our site is relevant. So that means that so far we have been looking at like how can we drive people to our e-commerce website and how can we, you know, make sure that whatever we advertise to them makes a lot of sense. But now we need to think about like the things that we're advertising on our site also need to make sense to the customer. And that's why anything that we like adjust on the site to push certain product needs to be still relevant and fall under the same parameters and the same factors that we discussed earlier. It needs to be right for the customer and not just random products. And of course, we need to be, you know, careful and find the right balance between how we do this. You know, so in this example, you can see obviously Amazon, they're pushing a lot of their own products, which is fine. And you know, we just need to put the right product at the right time. You know, so if someone is searching for Canon PowerShot, you know, SX420 whatever camera, then you probably don't want to talk to them about Prime Video, you know. But if someone lands on the homepage, you know, and you're not really sure yet what they want, then it's maybe a good opportunity to show them some interesting things that you have for them. And the other thing is also, of course, seasonality, and that's very important because there is potentially a new release of a, you know, hardware like an iPhone release or something like that, and we want to make sure that, you know, we have this on our catalog. Maybe there is a summer collection coming up, maybe there is a festive season. And then also in this example, you can see seasonality, right? Obviously needs to be also relevant. You know, if you want to buy some gloves or some masks right now, well, you can go to this website and they've got you covered. But we need to make sure that we merchandise our products accordingly and make sure that, you know, it stays up to date and that it also stays fresh. And that's very important, especially if we're dealing with a lot of like repeat visitors. We want to make sure that like when they come, they see something that they would potentially like. And in this example, it's like, you know, books you may like. It's like based on like, you know, past books that you have purchased or past books that you have looked at if you haven't purchased yet, and so forth. And that's the nice thing about e-commerce, that we can adjust all these things dynamically and we don't have to go there every day and, you know, like manually update this for the individual. It still requires time to obviously set all this up, that we have all the products and that we have to categorize them properly and that we have to tag them properly. But overall, like a lot of the work is done automatically and it scales. And I think this is the most important thing about e-commerce, it scales, while other methods don't necessarily scale in the same way. And then there is also the whole part about relevance, because if I have looked at something before, and like in this case, I looked at Moonlawless or something, when you come back to the site, then obviously helping people to continue their journey and like making it again easy for them to, you know, potentially buy something that they have looked at before. So that's the whole part about like, you know, how can we use different ways of like engaging people on the site. But then there is another very important page on our e-commerce website, which is our product listing. Now, from a product listing perspective, it's technically one of the most important pages, right? So probably, you know, on par with the actual product detail page. And this page, we need to make sure that it really is relevant and shows the customer the things that they want. And what we don't want is to, you know, have someone searching for a specific product and then showing them like the wrong things. And I'm not talking about like the wrong products in per se, but like as an example, if someone is searching for a digital camera, then we don't want to only show accessories, right? And well, the question is now, what are they looking for? But most likely they're looking for a digital camera and not a case for a digital camera, because we hope that they would have searched for this. So the more specific the user is, the more specific we need to be in our results. And while most e-commerce platforms these days like are pretty good at this, what doesn't necessarily happen from like by a default setup is to actually segregating this information into like ways that make sense to the consumer and to the customer. And if we look at this example, again, Amazon, I'm using Amazon, it's not because I'm a fan, but like they've done this for like enough time. I think that, you know, they probably have learned a thing or two. And the thing is this, that, you know, if you look at this page, if you look at their product detail page, like it really much reassembles a lot of those traits that we looked at earlier when we looked at that retail salesperson. So it kind of like does all those things, you know, in just like one page. And like the first thing that you can look at is like promotions. So they are pushing a couple of promotions on the top. Why would that make sense? Because like if I'm looking for digital cameras and you can show me a promotion, that might be a good thing for me, right? So, and that's an opportunity to do some of the other tactics that I mentioned earlier, such as like pushing specific products, pushing maybe products that are from your brand rather than someone else, and so forth. Then the actual search results kick in, which is of course important that they like, you know, match whatever the person has searched for. Then they have editorial picks, which is again things that they think is the right thing to show to you right now. Then they have what customers have also bought, which again, you know, is kind of like an automated way of like curating, you know, products that other people have bought based on an algorithm. And then they have like brands, right? So like related brands to whatever you search for. And that's why it's so important to get this page right, because while we don't want to confuse people on this page, we definitely want to offer them like the right information so that they can find the right things that they want, because we are not with them in person. We cannot like see how they're behaving. We cannot see if they're confused. We need to give them all the information so that they can have a self-guided shopping experience on this page. And then, of course, in terms of the product details page, which I said is one of the most important pages, of course, because this is the one where we need to make the sale and where we need to convert people. So one of the things, obviously, is the related or similar products. And I get this a lot where people say, but we need to have like related and similar products. And yes, that probably makes sense. But the real question is like, where on your page do you actually place this? Because you don't want to put this on the top of the page, because then you have the issue like the restaurant owner, you're like confusing the customer because they looked at that camera and there is the potential that they really want that camera, and you don't want to show them other stuff that like distracts them from buying it. So if anything, probably the initial recommendation would be to put it like more somewhere on the bottom, you know, so like if people like keep scrolling and they're still not happy to buy, then like you show them maybe some other options of stuff that you could buy as well. But it of course needs to be tested. And there are a lot of tools where you can do this. You know, you can like use a software like, I don't know, Hotjar, and install that and see like how people are actually behaving on this page. You can see like where they scroll, where they click on, you know, what they're like interacting with. And that gives a lot of insights on like, you know, does it make sense to have this or not? Another good example is actually for like product detail pages where people are removing the navigation, right? So on a like heavy, you know, product-driven e-commerce website might not work. But if you're selling few products, then you may want to have landing pages where you completely remove the navigation, because it like removes the the customer basically to just navigating and exploring something else and then, you know, drifting off or getting called somewhere. So yeah, so you want to be able to have them focus on that task, which is to buy something. And then of course, like another nice way is on this product detail page, or what we can do is like we can bundle products, right? So like here we have the example of something frequently bought together, and that's kind of like the whole upsell scenario. So where we can say, hey, if you're interested in this product, there is like a couple of things that you could add onto it, you know, and you have like a better overall solution. And that's definitely something that's good for this page because it helps with the upselling part. And then one more thing is, of course, the like the richness of this content. And there are a couple of things to it. So one of them is like these product pages are important because you want to optimize them for SEO. That's one thing. So like it's tough to compete for certain products on like Google, but like you want to still be optimized. And it's not only for your SEO rankings, but if you optimize these pages properly, you will have a reduction in advertising costs, because Google and Facebook, and I don't know if there are any other platforms out there anymore, but like those two for sure, what they do is that they give you a quality score on those landing pages. And if your quality score is low, and if people don't interact and stay long on your website, and if they don't read about it and so forth, then your quality score goes down. And if your quality score goes down, they're going to charge you more for your advertising fees. So that's why you want to make sure that your website is optimized. And for example, if you have a specific ad that talks about, you know, digital cameras, then you want to make sure that your landing page is talking about digital cameras as well, because it talks about digital camera accessories. You're going to have a high drop-off rate, and Google will notice that and then like penalize you in terms of like the money that you have to pay to actually get people clicking on this. So this is really important to keep in mind. But of course, you want to try and like rank organically as well on search engines. And then the other thing is, of course, to have this product page rich in terms of additional content such as reviews, product information. And what really doesn't work, unless you're really just competing on price, is to have like bare minimum information. Because what happens is like people will look at the product and then they will go somewhere else to read the reviews. And I mean, I do that if I go into a shop, I actually like look up on an e-commerce website the reviews about a product before I would buy it in the shop. You know, I might still buy it in the shop because I can buy it right there and then, but I will go somewhere else to read reviews. So if you look at this from a pure e-commerce perspective, if people go to your site and they don't have the information, then they have to go to another site to read that information, then there is a high chance that someone else will actually convert them. So that's why it's important to have that rich content on your site. And then you can also see that like funny picture of me, like it's actually the glasses I'm wearing right now. I bought them online. And you can, you know, try them on using some, you know, taking some pictures of yourself. And that kind of stuff also helps to a certain extent, you know, where you can, I mean, depends on the product, obviously, but like I think with glasses, if you like half know what you want, and you can like put it on your face and like look at it a little bit, that might help with making a buying decision. So now, once we have all that done, you know, once we have people, you know, on our side, once we have them, you know, giving them the right information, the right content, now it's about like increasing our conversions. And again, just because someone goes to our site and looks at our product and potentially even puts it into their shopping cart doesn't mean that they're making the final purchase. And retargeting and automation is one of the things that we can use to increase that conversion, but it's also the thing that we can use to extend this whole journey with our customer. So that means that like from really that just a visit, we can extend the time that we're spending with them across like different platforms. And I'm sure this happened to all of you. You went to a website and then for the next couple of weeks, you see an ad from this website popping up, maybe even on our website, I don't know. And while, you know, you might think it's annoying, but it actually works, right? Because like sometimes people think that they get busy, right? They get distracted, they go somewhere else. So you can win them back and you can increase their conversion. And not only for advertising, but also for email automation, because once you captured their emails, you can start sending them periodical emails. And yeah, so this is really important. And like one of the key things that I would look at in the beginning is obviously the whole you know, time when people are leaving the site, especially if they have like already put something into their shopping cart. So these are like like valuable targets, because I mean, for whatever reason they put it there, they were close to buying it, hopefully. So maybe that's the first ones to retarget. And then once you figure that out, you can like move further up the funnel again, and like retarget to people that maybe just visit the site for the first time. And just to give you some ideas at the end here, so to say, what can you actually do with retargeting and automation? So there would be promo code emails, right? So you could send someone an email after they went to a specific product and say, hey, here is a promo code for you to help them to make a final decision. You could push accessories for a product that they've just purchased. So maybe, anything that would like fit with a purchase that they've just made. And you don't have to do this obviously right away. You could do this like, after 5 days, after 10 days, and so forth. You could push products based on a specific interest. So if you have someone in your database, or if you retarget someone through advertising, if you see that they're looking at specific products, then you could push those products back to them. You could send how-to guides about like, if it's a more complicated product, right? So how can I actually use this product? And of course, then also ask for reviews, because then you can help, increasing and enriching your content. So that's the part where I'm talking. We're now going into Q&A. It was 46 minutes, and I'm going to switch the camera away from this so that I can see. And if anyone has any questions, comments, and feedback, we are very happy to help. What we also want to like offer is like anyone who would like to, have like a follow-up, has any questions, wants to have anything more in detail, wants to have the presentation, please reach out to us so we can share it with you. I know it was a lot of stuff and I was probably talking fast, but I wanted to bring a lot of important things across in just 45 minutes. So over to you guys if you have any questions. Okay, there's something in the chat. Where are the best places to have resources and information about e-commerce and digital marketing? YouTube, I would say. That's the first thing that comes to mind. I mean, if you want to learn anything about e-commerce, digital marketing, and you want to do that for free, I would definitely take a look at YouTube, because there is so much content out there where you can learn so much. If you have anything specific, just like drop us an email or something, we can take a look at it.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I question, could you tell us a bit about Prototype? I mean, where is your specialty? What do you do?
Oh, okay. So you're asking me to pitch Prototype. Okay, that's good. What we do is like, we do 3 things, right? So we have a strategy piece where we help businesses to find out like a digital strategy, how they can go online, how they can like improve like an existing process, for example. So we have like a program that we created. We've been using this for like over 3 years now. Probably like we had like 200 companies going through this. It's a very quick, agile methodology to like figure out, where does the business stand right now and where should it be in the future, and we help to create that kind of like path to get there. And the second part of what we do is everything from like, UX design, like building websites, apps, e-commerce websites, of course, that's why we're doing this as well. But yeah, so that's kind of like what we do. So we have a strategy piece and we have the implementation side of things. But we're not here to pitch ourselves. Yeah. But now you know.
Okay, thanks. So quick question. We're planning to build an e-commerce website. To get going, to get starting, if we want to send you the brief, is there like a template you suggest we use? Or what?
Yeah, sure. We have like, of course, yeah. I mean, we're doing business. This is e-commerce, right? We're doing business right here. No, definitely. We have a briefing template. We can send it to you, which has like, a set of questions, and then we can work out from there.
Okay, so I'll send you an email to introduce ourselves, and then you could send me back the brief.
Awesome, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, guys. Who else wants an e-commerce? Any questions? You don't have to want an e-commerce. We really we wanted to do this to to add somebody. Oh, there are some questions. Okay, Alan. Well, okay, so Alan asked, like, how would you describe the main difference between e-commerce and m-commerce? I would probably say it's like, probably the experience of it would be different, potentially, potentially products as well. If you look at e-commerce right now, I mean, and that's kind of like also the confusing part to me, you know, when like it's been around so long, and it's still kind of like this big question mark that people, I mean, I'm not saying people have a question mark about it, but like it's still not something that has like grown and been, you know, adapted across like a majority of the business. And I think that there is like multiple reasons for it, which is obviously there is the big players, and there is also a huge investment that needs to go into it. So I think that's one of the things why we have this kind of like classical e-commerce, you know, setup, you know, where people are buying things online. And then from an m-commerce perspective, there it's more about like the transactional nature of like making something more, you know, consumable. And I would see that more even like a brand specific thing, that like a specific brand or company would implement to like, you know, enable their customers to interact more with their business, if that makes sense. So that would be my take on the differences. So one of them is more sales, retail, kind of like online stuff, which is the e-commerce piece, and then the m-commerce part would be more around, you know, how can I enable transactions and services through that mobile channels. Okay, and there is G5D. Can you share some benchmarks of conversion rates? How do you budget for online ads? Okay, right. So that's a tough one, because benchmarking in terms of conversion rates, I mean, it depends on which conversion rate, right? So like if we're looking at the conversion rate on the ads itself, if we're looking at the conversion rate of where, you know, people have already like gone to the site and so forth, so each of those conversion rates would be lower and lower the wider the funnel is at that stage, right, of the journey. Now, the way we usually recommend to do is to kind of like start with a smaller test segment and then building it up from there. So what that means is that like instead of like, you know, configuring campaigns and obviously like blowing all your money into that, you start with like a very small, you know, test that you start, you know, kind of like trying things and then see how those perform and then increase it from there over time. The other thing that we're also doing is experimentation. And what that really means is to like set up kind of like a hypothesis and say like, okay, so if we have that target audience with this messaging, then, you know, potentially they could, you know, buy this specific product. And we then do this, you know, for like different elements and start testing those hypotheses and seeing if they actually convert. And if they do, we keep experimenting on top of it. And if they don't, we may remove. And the reason why that's kind of obvious, but like it's actually not, is that what happens a lot that we think we know who are our customers, and we think we know where they are, and we think we know how they behave. And doing this approach, you kind of like try something and you experiment with something that you actually don't necessarily think is the norm, but you may be surprised that you're actually still getting results from it. So yeah, that's how I would see it. And then actually on how to define the budget. So it depends a little bit on the type of product, but the way we would usually say to approach is to reverse calculate. So, and doesn't work for everything, right? Again, so if it's like, you know, like 10,000 product, you know, e-commerce website, then you can't do this for every single product. But like if it's like a lesser number of products, I would say, right, so where do you want your sales to be? And what do you want to spend in order to create those sales? Then in the beginning, you would have to assume some sort of a conversion rate. And then based on this, you could reverse calculate how much you can spend on each individual click on your ad, right? So, and then you know that like if, you know, 100 people click on your ad and you have 10% conversion rate, that 10 of them are actually gonna, you know, buy later on. And if your average, you know, product or ticket size is X, then you can make the number of sales. So I would just reverse calculate the whole thing to figure out the budget. Okay, so we have Majid from a designer perspective, willing to have a successful career in UX UI. What would your advice be? Like what things a designer has to know to be successful in this major? Thank you. All right, that's a good question. Okay, so UX UI, I think the first thing I would like, I mean, I don't know your background, right? But the first thing I would say, okay, so what do you want to be? You want to be a UX or a UI? I would first look at that. And I'm not saying that you can't be both, but I would pick one to start with. And let's say it's UX, then I would like look at everything that's like, you know, like data-driven UX, you know, so how can you really, and because UX really, it's about like understanding this funnel, you know, I'm talking about like, it's not only e-commerce, it's any funnel, right? So like UX is about like understanding this journey that a customer goes through to do whatever they have to do, you know, and it could be like buying something, but it could also be like, you know, just whatever, you know, browsing a website or contacting someone or like whatever, like doing stuff. And that whole experience, you know, needs to be, you know, dissected, understand, it needs to be measurable. And then the UX part is obviously like improving all this based on the data. And the UI part is then like making it beautiful, right? So so that's how I would look at it. So if I, you know, was you, and you know, since you're asking the question, probably I would like pick one of the two for now, you know, focus on them and you know, excel on that, and then move to the next one. I can send you a link later on. There is a nice online course actually from a guy who put together a UX UI course. Cool. All right. Any more questions? Don't make it awkward, guys. There we go. Here's one. Okay. Oh, sorry, I lost this. Abdullah? Yeah. Okay, how do you prepare for scaling up? Okay, can you just maybe add to what you mean by what you want to scale? And in the meantime, while you do that, if you can just tell, you know, if you can just add, you know, what you want to scale, I can answer that. And in the meantime, Nabil has a question about like what we prefer, if it's Shopify Plus or Magento. Good one. Okay. Right. So my view is this. I think there are four different ways four different ways you can build an e-commerce platform, right? There is the ready-made online platform kind of solution thing, which is the Shopify, to be honest, I guess. And that's really good because like you can get set up really quick, and you don't have to, you know, invest into, you know, like hosting configurations and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's like very quickly deployed, and that's the benefit of like Shopify or Shopify Plus. We've done Shopify Plus, and you can even customize this quite heavily. So even that's pretty good, you know, if you think about it. I think there is one. Okay, Shopify, like you end up using a lot of plugins at some point, but I guess it's the same as if you're just coding a lot of custom things. There is one big thing, which is like if you really scale, right, and it really becomes like a big operation, then you kind of like have a little bit dependency on Shopify. But overall, a good platform. And by the way, what a lot of people are underestimating is the infrastructure required to have like a high traffic e-commerce platform. And that's to your next point, Magento, which is great. You know, Magento open source, depending on which version, you don't have to pay for it. You can install it, you can put it on your server. And there is one small caveat, right? Because it's the following, like once your traffic grows significantly, like it becomes quite a task to manage that Magento setup. And you have to like do a lot of things to like optimize it and make it scale and so forth. So then the question is like, if you don't have that high traffic, where you want to go for Magento in the first place, right? So that's kind of like that. Okay, so why do you need Magento if you're not having the traffic? Well, you need to worry about scale, and once you need to worry about scale, then you know you need to worry about Magento. And The third thing that you can build an e-commerce solution is obviously going for any of those enterprise kind of things and stuff like that, which I think the only reason people do this is because, like, you know, they get like an ERP system with it and that kind of stuff, and like they have just to finish on that quickly, like the other way you have, like, you build your own platform. I would only recommend this if you really need to scale, you know, because then it really makes sense. Or if you want to build IP, you know, again, because you want to scale and you want to own the platform, or you want to resell it to other people in the future. So sorry, that was a long answer. Okay, G, Feidi. How difficult is it to integrate with vendor systems to check inventory, arrange for drop shipping, etc.? Is it a highly customizable process, or are there common interfaces used? Okay, so that's usually where it gets difficult, and that's where a lot of people struggle at some point, because as mentioned earlier, setting up the e-commerce platform is relatively straightforward and easy, well, ready-made, right? But like then configuring the whole thing with the inventory and with the shipping and so forth, and even credit card processing, that's where it can become a little bit more complicated. Now, most of the common platforms like Shopify, NobCommerce, WooCommerce, Magento, all those kind of things, they usually have, like, you know, for example, like an RMX plugin already, like a pay for plugin and all that kind of stuff. So there is a lot of ready-made stuff available, but I wouldn't always assume that just because there is a plugin available that it will just work out of the box. So usually around those things, it requires a little bit of customization from a technical perspective, but of course also customizing it to your specific needs. Okay, anyone has some more questions? Right, guys. So that's our, okay. There was a question. Yes. So the question is like if Shopify can serve as a marketplace, and I believe it does. Nikhil, are you there? Nikhil, you did some research on this the other day, right? Let's see if Nikhil is there. But I think we looked at this the other day, and there is an option for Shopify to have some market. Yeah. Yeah, there might be a charge. And by the way, so even for Shopify, like if you really want to scale, like you want to look at Shopify Plus, I think it starts at $2,000 a month or something like that. But I mean, there is a good, it sounds maybe a lot, $2,000 a month, but like, again, if you scale Magento or anything like this, you're going to pay more in the end. So it's still pretty good. Okay, Alan has another question. Why do you think some retailers and merchants are fearful of online platforms? Don't know. No, why they're scared from the dark. I think it's just like really disrupting the way that they've been working before, right? So, I mean, look at the. I mean, if we look at the current situation, you know, like we are so you know, keen on getting people back into like our retail outlets, into our malls and so forth, and I think it's just a disruption to the way that we've been doing things for a long time. I mean, not when I say we, like the retailers and the merchants, I suppose. So that's my explanation to that, that it's like, it's just a different way of doing things. And there are a couple of challenges with it, right? So if I would put myself into the position of a retailer, so what's the issue? I need to have knowledge about that whole thing. And we have like a whole model that we use for the consulting piece, which is like, if you do any initiative, and let's say it's an e-commerce, right? There are three elements to like create this. Like, it's the knowledge part, right? So I need to have the resources and the internal knowledge to actually operate that thing, that e-commerce website in this case. There is the processes that I need to adjust to make things work differently. And then there is the platform, which is probably the e-commerce thing, that I also need. And everyone just always focuses on that e-commerce platform, but forgets about the knowledge, resources, and the processes that we need to adjust. And adjusting that means a lot of change. And I think that's why people are always fearful about making those changes, because it's effort, and like I need to change my process. I need to change the way I've been working before. I've bought that, mall over there or whatever, or like the shop, so like now why would I not have people want to go there? So I think that's one of the reasons. And what I also think is that, like, most likely, and I think we've already seen this, like that's why we have those big malls, right? Because like people are going to the mall not just like to go to a retail outlet, but they go there for like all sorts of things, like from like going to the cinema, eating food, shopping, going to the clinic that's in the mall, whatever, to meet friends, so it becomes more of like a lifestyle, gathering place, rather than like a retail outlet. And I think that's kind of like going to be more and more like into that direction, that the mall becomes like something where I go for a period of time and I do things, but everything else will happen online. And we've seen this in so many markets where it's already like that, but I think that the fear of change and adjusting things and doing things differently, that's how I would explain it. Okay, so Safir is asking, for small, medium-sized business, which one would you suggest, WooCommerce or Shopify? Right, we're not affiliated with any of the two, but I would probably go for Shopify, just because, okay, we have some experience with Shopify, we have some experience with WooCommerce as well, but like I think just like Shopify is like for a small business, that wants to go online, wants to try this out and really not focus on that technology part. I think Shopify should be perfectly fine, and then you can focus more on those things that we mentioned in the presentation, which is making sure that you measure and advertise and analyze and all that kind of stuff to like really figure out like how you can sell stuff online, rather than dealing with technology issues.